Hi, Book 2. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and it's time for another literary ramblings, either 17 or 18. I have to always, when I come up with the title for these videos, I always have to double check when it's ones that, where I'm trying to do series. And so far, this is the one that's last longest, I think, of the attempted series I've tried to do. Okay, so, I didn't film yesterday I didn't do a day 3 yesterday because I had to go to work at 4, and, I know how long I like to talk on these videos, and there's other stuff I want to do at the same time, before I had to go in. And then my dad has actually surprised me, and, he had to get a haircut, so once he called and got on the list, because, of course, now you gotta, when they gotta be cautious at public, places, so there's now a system where you have to call in and kind of reserve a time. And the shopping center where Books A Million is on the way. So he offered to drop me off there, which I probably should not have done that. I admit, I have a bit of a problem. And as I've always said, yeah, it's amusing to me and to probably all you guys, all you readers, but it's not as amusing to my parents. That whenever when I always have to buy books. I just got received. You guys know I just received my order from Thrift Books finally, and it's this one too. And then I finally found a perfect day to go into the Roast Office bookshop, and you guys know I also bought books there, so I probably did not need to go. And then, the books I purchased at the used bookstore before my mom left. So, between the last week of August and this first week of October, I've gotten quite a few books, and I probably didn't need to. So I acknowledge, but I feel like I can't really go cold turkey, because then I won't do anything. I mean, yeah, I'll probably get some reading more. I might get some more reading done. But then the problem is, it gives me I become obsessive when I hear about books that I want to buy. So maybe those are just excuses. But I know I'm probably not the only one who has this problem. I mean, at least I'm not one of those people. I know that there are a lot of people that find themselves buying 10, 20 books in one go. Of course, they also use Book Depository and Thrift Books, which were cheap. Ways to get books cheap, or go to used bookstores. So maybe I really can't. I can't use that as a defense, because they buy cheap books. But then I also work I work at a grocery store, so I don't get paid I probably don't get paid as well as some of those people who buy 10, 20 books in one go. But anyway, so as you guys know, I've already mentioned that I finished Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde at midnight going into the third. So technically it was the third when I finished it. I read the last chapter. And I gotta say, I guess maybe because of the little bit of glimpses of adaptations. I mean, I've never actually watched a full-on adaptation, but there's been other, like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and then even in Van Helsing, we met Mr. Hyde for a brief moment. That, I'm expecting more of Jekyll and Hyde, but we don't really get a lot of them in the story, surprisingly. It's mostly from the perspective of, a doctor friend of Jekyll's, like a coworker, I guess, his butler, and then the lawyer, Mr. Utterson. It's mostly from their perspective, and they're observing the weird behavior of Jekyll and the strangeness of Mr. Hyde, and so we don't get a lot of Jekyll and Hyde. And it's not until the last chapter that we really get an explanation of what happened. I mean, of course, if you're already familiar with the story, you can kind of guess what what happens. You kind of already know if you're familiar with it, the content of this original, the classic. But we don't get an explanation of it until the end, and it was kind of disappointment. And at first, I did not even realize it was a novella. Like, I remember one of my friends having it as a signed reading, and I want to say high school. And although I'm not 100%, whenever there's things I remember from a long, long time ago, but I'm the only one that remembers it, then I question myself. I'm like, am I remembering this correctly? Maybe they didn't. And in this case, maybe my friend didn't read it. Not that, I haven't interacted with this friend in a long time. So, I don't know. But I think I remember it being on her reading list at the high school she went to, because she went to a different high school than me. So I did not realize it was not that long. It was actually a novella, so it was only like 6 chapters. And they're short chapters. I mean, there's only a couple chapters that are kind of long-ish, I should say. And it was interesting, and it looked at the duality of man and, the darkness in all of us, how we all are capable of evil, and that was interesting. But I think, I think I said this before, I feel like they could have expanded on it. Robert Louis Stevens could have expanded on it more. And I feel like sometimes with horror books, from that older horror books, it's almost like because of what we have today, which is these badass movies that are action and scary and, special effects and stuff, and, we have the privilege of watching them on TV and seeing actors perform it. It can be kind of a letdown when you read books, which I know, like, books, a lot of people say, oh, books are better than the movies, but better, how dare you say that a book is not as good as a movie, is not better than a movie. But I think there are times when it translates better on screen anyway. And sometimes it's more interesting, I'm sorry, but our generation is so used to that kind of stuff that it's like, I think we appreciate and can get into movies more. Which, yeah, I still get frustrated that people don't read enough, and I think that's why it's so annoying when people are, like, so amazed that I read, and they're all like, oh, people your age don't read. Of course, they think my age is a lot younger than it really is, because of my features make me look like a lot younger than my actual age. And I kind of roll my eyes when I realize that people do not know who Charles Dickens is. I'm surprised, and then at the same time I kind of roll my eyes like, of course you don't, but at the same, I mean, the last person I encountered, which was a couple days ago, I did say, and, I was like, well, I guess because I hang out with a lot of readers and literary types, so I'm always surprised when people don't say that they don't know who Charles Dickens is. But it was still, I'm so glad I read it. I can mark it off my list as a classic that I've read, and it was an easy read, and it was still, like I said, it was still interesting, It just was, I was expecting a little bit more from it. So other than that, I keep trying to read a little bit, but I feel like I'm inching through Bleak House. And not because it's boring, it's because the times I choose to read it are not, like, I either get distracted or I start to fall asleep. Not because of the book, it's not the book's fault. It's just because I, go to bed at midnight, or sometimes not until, and I don't fall asleep, and then I have to get up at like 7 in the morning to go to work. So yeah, it's my own. It's not the book's fault. It's my fault that I choose to. So I need to read this. This is gonna be a priority today. It's gonna be one that I'm gonna focus on today. I'm gonna read a little bit, read a bit more. Like finally get up to chapter. I think this is 22. The XX. I think. Because I think the single X is 10, but then the two X's I think or actually no, I think it's 20. I have to look up. I'm not very good at reading Roman numerals. I have to look them up still to when it gets to X, after X. I have to end up looking it up. So that might just be 20. But yeah, I'm slowly inching my way through this, and like I said, I think it's just bad timing when I choose to pick it up. So I need to read it today, make it a priority today, so I can read a lot more than a couple pages. In fact, read a lot more than one chapter. And I also found myself when I've gotten to the chapters that are talking about Lady Deadlock and some of the other characters, then I get it takes me a while to get into it, to get used to it. Because the first, the Esther parts are in first person, so it's a little easier for me to get into that narrative because I'm used to it. While the other narrative it takes me a minute. Not that, I read a lot of first person stories, but I don't know, it just feels a little more comfortable reading, and maybe that's because, classics like Jane Austen, and then the other two Charles Dickens books, like David Copperfield and stuff, I'm from, those were in first person, and Great Expectations were in first person, so I have to get used to back into the whole, and Dickens there are so many plots going on in a Dickens novel that it's a little, it can get convoluted, and it's struggle to follow. So yeah, Dickens is not easy to get into. But I just need to, like I said, I need to make this a priority today. Okay, so I'm also reading. So I finally started reading my reread of The Picture of Dorian Gray, and I think I'm gonna like it better now than when I first read it with my one of my best friends, Therese. We read this together years ago, and I feel like it was one of these things where I feel like, oh, I'm so smart because I'm reading this book, and then I read it, and it's like, it just comes off as kind of boring because I'm not used to these kinds of books. And I was a teenager, and I think not all teenagers, but teenagers that, are into reading, I think, like I said, not all of them, I think some of them, a book like this would be kind of boring. But now that I'm a little older and my tastes have changed and I read more classics, I think I'm gonna be more into this. And now I'm a little bit more, and I've read two Baskervilles plays, though A Woman of No Importance and The Importance of Being Earnest. So in case you don't know, this is basically about a guy that is told he's really pretty, and by this guy who's painting his portrait, and so he makes a deal with the devil and is like, so that he can live forever and stay pretty forever. And he has a friend, Henry, who is a bad influence on him, and the more bad and sinful stuff he does, his portrait will be affected by it. It will age and start to look ugly. So, and the first little, I thought it was kind of amusing, and, kind of eye-rolling too, that this Henry, we're meeting Henry and Basil being the guy who paints the picture of Dorian, and they're talking, and Henry says to Basil, he's like, you cannot be intelligent and be pretty at the same time, essentially. Like, pretty people are dumb and intelligent people are ugly. And it's like, really? Then apparently I'm considered ugly then, because I think I'm pretty smart. I mean, I'm not like a genius or anything, but I'm not stupid either. And it helps that I read, which I think is the point. It's kind of critiquing people like Henry and their way of thinking, and how the idea of them thinking that it's better to be pretty and be dumb than to be intelligent and ugly, which is not, which, of course, when I, we know is not true. I mean, I know a lot of smart people are very beautiful, beautiful people, and inside and out. So, but I'm looking forward to reading this again and re-experiencing it, and maybe this, and I believe this time I will appreciate it more and get into it more. Which, unfortunately, which I was just thinking about this, how, like, because this is a reread, and I'm rereading, and the person I read it with before, we're currently reading, we're currently reading Paradise Lost. So it got me thinking about that and realized I'm probably going to have to come back to that in November. Which I hope she's not ahead. Although, like I said in my last video, she's a lot busier than me, so I probably don't have that kind of problem. I'm guessing in January will be when my dad, if he's ready, I'll give him the book. I'll probably give him the book and Paradise Lost, because he actually expressed interest in reading it, because of course he read it in either college or high school, and he wanted to reread it. So, and we did talk about it a little bit on the way when we were visiting my grandma. So, anyway. Yes, I cannot wait to pursue this. I decided to make this my second book because it's not as long. And then, now my non-Victorian that I am currently reading, that I decided to attempt to read because it's not creepy or scary. I mean, it might have a bit of a creep factor. It's a mystery. And it's the second book in the Hangman's Daughter trilogy, The Dark Monk. And it's basically about, the mystery is this guy gets this I think he's a priest. Let me see. Yep, priest. The priest, this parish priest gets murdered because he's a glutton, and he gets great because he sees these delicious donuts covered with honey. And so he gets murdered, and so the physician, whose name I do not remember, let me see if I can find his name, Simon. So the physician Simon and Jacob Kucel and Magdalena team up once again to figure out who is the one that poisoned the priest. And I got as far as the priest getting poisoned in the prologue, and Simon showing up to investigate and realizing that it's a murder, and him calling Jacob to check it out. And they realize that there might be something bigger going on there might be something bigger surrounding this murder course. And Magdalena is in town. She has been made into she is now a midwife in training. But unfortunately, she still has a reputation of being the hangman's daughter. So, and people don't like the hangman. They're afraid of him. So she has a negative reputation too. And unfortunately, the midwife, Martha, ends up having to send her out, tell her to leave, because she doesn't want there to be any trouble while she's trying to save this baby. And of course, what really annoyed me is, once again, the father of the baby, I get that he's scared and he doesn't want his wife to die, but once again, his idiocy is revealed, because he says, well, if my wife and the baby don't survive this, then it's the midwife's fault. It's like, no, that's ignorance on your part. It is not her fault that they didn't survive. Stuff happens. Sometimes it's sad, but sometimes, neither Martha or the other people in this town, they don't have the knowledge. And maybe it's not his fault that he believes that is dumb enough to believe that the midwife is responsible if they don't survive, which I hope in this they do. I think they will, because I feel like that would just add, I feel like they need to focus on the whole priest murder. So I feel like the author won't have it where the mother and the baby die, because then that will open another can of worms and add more plot drama. And we're not focusing on Martha in this one. Martha was the focus of the first book. She was, because of, the people's belief, blaming her for if babies and mothers don't survive, in the thing with the kids and everything. So they all accused her of witchcraft in the first book. So in the second book, she's not the central figure. She's not the central figure to the conflict. So I don't think the author will, have it be like that. I think the author will have them. I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like the author will have them survive, so that we don't take away from the whole murder of the priest. So Magdalena is, walking along, and she actually runs into the priest's sister, who received a letter from her brother. And she shows up with the intention to talk to her, to go see her brother. So she doesn't know he's dead yet. And Magdalena decides to take her to the brother, because she also does not know that the priest is dead, and that her father and Simon are investigating it. And so far, once again, and of course, we have the whole romance between Simon and Magdalena, but they're still not, and everyone's still encouraging them to pursue other people, because, if Simon marries the hangman's daughter, that's not good. That's going to ruin his reputation, because she already has a bad one. And so his father is pushing him to pursue other women, but love is love. If you love someone, it's gonna be hard for you to fall in love with someone else. I mean, it can happen, but I don't think it will in their case. So I'm not that far. I'm just, my own hair. I'm not even finished with chapter 1. Like, I brought it with me yesterday when my dad dropped me off. But there's really no place to sit in our books million, because it's small. I mean, there's a bench in the back by the magazines, but it doesn't even have a back. And so I ended up walking around the whole shopping center until, there is a bench a little closer all the way on the other end. So I ended up sitting there and getting some reading done, but then I got a little sidetracked, because every time I would see someone walking by, I would look up. If I see a car drive by, I would look up too. Or, I would check my phone in case I didn't hear it, ding or anything like that. So I didn't get a lot of reading done yesterday, and, I'm almost, I did, that's right, because I read the last 2 pages at work during my 15-minute break, so I'm on chapter 2. But I haven't even started chapter 2 yet. So that's another book I need to read today. So those are 3 my priorities this week. So it's time for me to share what I got. Books A Million. So first, I did buy some of the fantasy books that I have been putting off buying. And it wasn't because I was only, and I was really interested in these, but I was kind of in the mood for classics, so I was focusing on buying all the classics. So I kind of put these off, but I finally got the second book in the second Mistborn era. The second book. I haven't started reading the first book, but I will soon. And then I finally got this book, the first book. In the Last Magician. I don't remember what the trilogy is called. Well, this one says the Last Magician trilogy, so I don't know if that's actually what it's called. Why'd they do that? What was the point of that? It says, also by Lisa Maxwell, the Last Magician series, and then under it says The Devil's Thief, and The Devil's Thief is the second one in the Last Magician series, so what's the point of putting the Last Magician series and then putting the second book in the series as 2 separate things? That's silly. But anyway, I've heard a lot about this from people like Reagan from Peruse Projects. And then I think there's some other people who I've heard read this and really liked it. I always love the cover of this. the idea of the snake. The whole snake eating itself. I always thought that's a cool symbology. But, oh, and I just realized it's actually a skeleton of a snake. Or, like, the snake starts, but then it twists and turns and then eventually becomes a skeleton. I did not realize that. That's cool. And I like the typography of the title, I think. I really like that kind of sort of cursive writing style, but not exactly. And I'm always playing with those, the fonts. I should say I guess the font. I don't know if the typography and font are the same thing. But on my word processor, my word, I always like playing with the fonts on that when I make documents and stuff, whether it's like a list or like I'm working on I'm actually typing out a story or something. I like playing with this. But anyway, I've heard a lot about this, and I believe it involves a female magician traveling through time. Something like that. I don't remember the exact, and I don't want to, read the description on the back to waste time. But like I said, I believe it has to do with a female magician traveling through time. Like she has to find something, I think. But before I start reading, I'll probably read the back description. But like I said, I don't want to waste time doing that on this video. So these are the two fantasy books I got. And as you saw on my thumbnail, my hopeful thumbnail, the thing that I hope becomes a thumbnail is this. I got this. So I originally had a mass market paperback copy of this book. And at the time, I was kind of like bored with it. So again, I feel like classic horror, our generation, the millennium generation, so used to horror movies, and the action and the special effects and the visuals of a movie and a TV show, that it's like sometimes horror novels, older horror novels back in the day can be a bit disappointing. But now I know what I'm getting into with this horror book, and this is one that, and also I think it does, as much as I try not to be as much as I feel a little guilty if I'm someone who kind of prioritizes the aesthetic of a book. But I gotta admit, I think it does help make the reading experience more fun when the book is aesthetically pleasing. So about this copy, I did consider getting the Penguin English Library copy, or a vintage copy, but I decided not to. I opted not to as soon as I saw this one, because I do want more of this cloud edition as well, because I kind of like the velvety leather feel of this cover, and then it's engraved. Quotes are engraved in it from the book, and they're all different colors. Like there's a case of all of Jane Austen's novels, and they're all, of course, pastel colors, which I think is really pretty. And like I said, I have gotten more into Jane Austen. I've definitely learned to appreciate her more, and I'm starting to really like her a little bit more. And I did put on my Amazon wish list some of the vintage editions of some of her novels, the ones that are my favorites so far. But yeah, I think this is really pretty. I mean, I really like, it's simple, but it's very elegant, I think. And like I said, I like the feel of this leather cover, this leather binding with the quotes on it. And then the end pages, there's some kind of image on the end pages. There's some kind of design. In this case, it's a bunch of trees, and then there's a full moon. And I'm guessing it's the same thing on the other. Yep. So not anything spectacular, but it's very simple, but I still really love it. And sometimes simple is nice. This is another font that I really like. I think it's really cool. And it fits. And of course it's in red. And it kind of stands out too, the fact that the title's in red. It makes it stand out a little bit more. But yeah, like I said, I'm starting to think that, yeah, I mean, reading aesthetically pleasing books kind of helps, especially with, when it comes to classics. Because sometimes classics can be a little bit dry because, first of all, they wrote a lot more, a lot more words because they got paid by the word. And sometimes they're hard to really get into because we're used to the modern writing style today. Like the Stephen King's and Sarah J. Maas's, their writing is a little bit more to the point, a little less wordy and less flowery. Although she's a little bit more, specifically Sarah J. Maas is a little more flowery than King. But I feel, so it's kind of hard to get into, but at least, I think now that I'm a little bit older and have more experience and read different types of writings, I think maybe I'll get into this more. And I almost want to start reading it now. And I could read it for Victober because, for like, even though I did read a fantasy / science fiction book with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde for the prompt of reading a book from your contemporary favorite genre, your modern favorite genre, and that could count as that. But I am tempted to check this out as well, because I'm like, see, that's what happens with me. I buy a new book that I've been thinking about buying, and I get excited to all of a sudden I want to start reading it now when I buy it, but at the same time I want to savor it. I don't want to read it right away. I want to let it sit for a while on my shelf. But I keep debating if I'm going to get rid of Jekyll and Hyde, but I also have some other stories in that one that I want to read. And it's not one, and the thing is, it's not even one of my bigger books anyway, as far as thickness goes. It's a pretty thin book, Jekyll and Hyde. Not this one, because obviously you can tell this one is not that thin. So it's a pretty thin book, so it doesn't take up a lot of space. But it's kind of hard because some of the ones that I could get rid of that do take up a lot of space, like the Magician series, for instance, that gets a lot of negative reviews, and people seem to like the show better, which gives me hope because I know that people have a lot of issues with the books because there are some questionable things in those books, in the Magician series by Lev Grossman, that people are uncomfortable with. And, I was thinking, well, the show does it better, but then I was like, does it? I mean, especially since I'm only going by what I heard about the books. But then someone, Lincoln is her first name. I don't remember her channel name at the moment, but her first name is Lincoln. And she's been reading, books through the decades. She has a series called that, which I think is really cool. And she read The Magicians, the first book, which is called The Magicians. And she said that she watches the show and she does like the show better than the book. Especially because the book, from what I hear, from what she said and what I've heard from other people, it kind of speeds through the years. Like, by the end of the book, we're all of a sudden in the first, at the end of, like, we're in year 5 of their schooling. So it kind of, while the show expands it and tweaks it a little bit, and I'm wondering, but then I also don't want this to be another book or series where I buy it and then I never get around to reading it, and then I start to hear things that makes me less inclined to read it. I want to at least attempt to read it, which I have started it. I just haven't picked it up in a couple years, actually, which is really sad. So I don't want this to be another one that I neglect. Just like the series, the Seven Realms series is in danger of being like that too, because yes, I read the first 2 books, but I'm not in the mood to read the third book. But I do want to finish the series because it's only 2 more books. It's just they're thick books. And again, I don't want to, I don't want this to be another series that I never finish. And that is what happened with Throne of Glass is that I didn't finish the series. Like I read up to I read books 1 through 4, but then 4 was like an okay read. I still liked and I still enjoyed it, but then I started to lose interest in Sarah J. Maas, and I think it's partly because I heard the things I heard about Sarah J. Maas, which that's the problem. I start hearing in BookTube about these negative things, or read on Goodreads, and it's like I start to be like, well, I guess I let it kind of in. I feel like there are times when I do let it influence me a little bit and influence my decision, but then when I realize this, then at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to waste time because it's a big commitment, and I have so many other books to read. So I end up getting. So Sarah J. Maas's Throne of Glass has been donated. In fact, I think all her books have been. I think I have to double check on. I might still have in the box in the corner of my room. I might still have A Court of Mist and Fury and Court of Wings and Ruin. And I know Wings and Ruin was a disappointment for a lot of people. But Court of Mist and Fury ends on cliffhanger, so it's like I still want to. And there are a lot of stuff in A Court of Wings and Ruin that I personally liked. Like, yeah, there were things that I agree with everybody else about. And the one major death wasn't even that major because they were characters that the reader didn't spend a lot of time with, but they were a character that's part of the family of Freya's family, but then we don't spend a lot of time with that character, and I'm sure it's pretty obvious who that character that she decides to kill off. And I don't care if I'm spoiling, if this is a spoiler for people. I was really annoyed by that was the character that she chose to kill. One of the characters she chose to kill off. But the only major character she chose to kill off. Well, okay, no, that's not true. There's 2 other characters. So that kind of makes more, but it still doesn't make, it's not enough for me. Like, even though, yeah, she killed off those 2 characters, I feel like, for me, personally, it wasn't a big of a loss that those characters died. Like, it's more like, oh, if they die, that's sad, but at the same time, it's like, it wasn't as personal for me. But anyway, but yeah, this is the other series. The Seven Realms series. So I need to read Grey Wolf Throne, and then I got 2 more books and 1 more book. So I just need to get these 2 read. But I just don't, and it doesn't help. Sometimes I feel the pressure to remove books from my shelf so I can buy more books later. But yeah, I love these. So I might go ahead and start it anyway. Like I said, I gotta pick an easy book. So The Dark Mind, I'm gonna try to attempt to read The Dark Monk. Make that a book I read in bed. Like, get a little bit read during the day, and then read a little bit more when I go to bed. Which I need to try to go to bed, get in bed by 11, because tomorrow is another 9 to 2, and then I am off on Tuesday. Which is kind of, that always bugged me, the whole, like, having, only 1 day off and then having to go to work the next day. It's not, it's a little bit of, because it feels like the day goes by so fast and there's not enough hours in the day, especially if you're doing something like this, where I talk a lot in these videos. I mean, like, it's almost 1 o'clock. And granted, I also spent some time working on a Sudoku puzzle. I don't know I think it's the New York Times one. I don't know if only the crossword is in the New York Times or the Sudoku is also in it. But I know the crossword is the New York Times edition version that we use in our town's newspaper, the Pilot. But I don't know if the Sudoku. I just know that it was kind of hard. But that's the closest I get to numbers. Like, I do not like math. I cannot stand math. I cannot comprehend and solve. You could explain it to me all you want, but it's not going to go through, and I'm not going to understand it. But I like doing Sudoku puzzles because it's more about, it's not math, it's more about strategy and figuring out, and critical thinking in a way, because you're trying to figure out the numbers, putting them in the blocks, in the columns and the rows, but make sure you don't put two numbers in of the same numbers in the column, row, or block. It's actually, I mean, if you like that kind of stuff, it is fun. I know that's not everybody's cup of tea, but I was working on one. I was working on it, and it was a bit hard, so I'm taking a break from it. Ooh, I did not notice that there's a little bat in the corner. See if you can see, see right at the top corner, there's a bat on each page. That's cool. So I'm gonna try to get those done as well. And even if I don't get Bleak House done, that's okay. By the end of the month, that's fine. But I want to get some other non-Victorian literature read this month, and then I want to and unfortunately some of these that I planned are gonna have to wait until November. I just don't want stuff like the Sherlock Holmes stories to be neglected again. I want to read them because I have these two big volumes of them, and then I have the Hound of Baskervilles in mass market paperbacks. So I want to read those, and I don't want them to get neglected another year where they get neglected. So this winter, I want to read those, at least some of the stories. Because I mean, I've read some of Fitzgerald's short stories, which, although that bind up is a paperback, and the volumes for Sherlock Holmes stories are hardback, and that kind of can make things a little more difficult and less interested in reading them because I can't carry them around with me. And then I'm gonna have to. Some of these other ones are gonna have to wait to the 13th Tale and Paradise Lost, like I said, is gonna have to wait as well until November. Like I said, hopefully Therese has not already read beyond book 3. But I have to message her though, because I'm gonna see how far, if she's read any of it yet. Like I said, she's so much busier than me, so she doesn't have the time. I have the time, but my problem is I'm reading a bunch of other books at the same time. So, and like I said, I try to do these kinds of things like Booktober and readathons and stuff. I don't like those week-long readathons because it's too much pressure, and there's a lot of chunky books that I choose to read, but then I know at the same time I'm not a fast reader, so I do not get through them as quickly. But now, even though this one looks pretty chunky, it's only 16 chapters. The chapters are just a little bit long, so I can get through these a little bit quicker. And then I also like that it's big print, so bigger print. So I like that too. And it's kind of, despite the long chapters, it's kind of the mystery. It's a mystery, so it's like the chapters are fast paced. And also, I'm one of those people who likes these kind of deckled hedges. I know a lot of people don't, and I get that there are criticisms of them, but I kind of like them because it makes it look like an old-fashioned. I also love that these French flaps. I know one of the books that I bought. Oh, I know. What is it? It's this. I think it's this one. Yeah, this one. They also have the French flaps, which I think is really cool. I love that. Ooh. Dang it. Sorry, guys. You kind of disappeared from me for a minute there. I don't know if I disappeared for you, but... And also, so this is where I saw it. Because I can't remember whose video I was watching. I don't know if it was... What is her name? I forgot her name already. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. It might not even be her, but one of the people I was watching last night, talked about that you get in some of those book subscription boxes, they have, I stopped that. They have, they're talking about the Ex Libris, which means the library of. So I did not. So it has that. She says it's usually in a sticker form, but that is so. I did not realize it has this, but I guess all these collectors versions, some of them might have it, especially these vintage ones, probably have it. Makes sense. It looks like a little. See, does this one have it? The Penguin Literary. Nope, it doesn't have. It. I want to buy some more of these, but it's hard to pick them because of like so many. Because especially in thrift books, because they will go out of stock quickly. I think, which is I'm not really surprised because who doesn't want to buy these cool Lincoln editions, even if they're dirty. Which, yeah, I just realized it's the back that's really dirty. But I think in this case is also because this one's it's actually from the Hamilton Public Library, which I do not know where that. I guess it's probably in New York. The Hamilton Public Library is probably in New York because that's where Hamilton. Even though he's not originally from there, he's an immigrant. You kind of, I think people associate Hamilton with New York because he lived there with his family. So it probably is in New York. I'll have to look it up though to double check, but it makes sense that that library would probably be somewhere in New York because it's like I said, it's where Hamilton, first Secretary of the Treasury, lived. And if you watch the musical Hamilton, he played a big part in the whole when America was first kind of born. He played a major role in all that. But unfortunately, he ruined his chances of ever becoming president, according to the play, because he cheated on his wife and stuff. So there was the whole Reynolds pamphlet and all of that, and he exposed himself. So, and he upset a lot of people back in. He did not get along with a lot of people. But yeah. So and as I said when I last video when I talked about this, when I showed this to you guys, it's actually, like I said, it's from a library, and it's funny because some of those reviews, when I was trying to freak out because I might not get this exact edition that I wanted, because sometimes it's unpredictable what you're gonna get with these. One review, the title of the review was, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. Okay, Hamilton, what's his name was not. Forrest Gump was not Southern, I don't think. Actually, he was. Never mind. I think he was from Alabama. But that's what they titled their review, basically saying that you don't know what you're gonna get with thrift books. But I mean, it's an used bookstore, so yeah, I was upset and I was nervous that I might not get this edition because what was the point of selecting this edition if I wasn't going to get it anyway? I was just going to get a generic, regular penguin, like those ones with the black, where the bottom is black and then the top, the border around it is black, and then the title, and there might be a picture, like a painting or something. So, that's what bothered me. It was like, what was the point of spending a little bit more money, even though it wasn't a lot? Like my mom said, I just spent like $20. What was the, but still, what was the point of spending that tiny bit more money if you weren't going to get this edition anyway? But I totally forgot what I was saying, what I was talking about. I can't not remember what I was talking about. But anyway, so I'm gonna stop talking now. And get some reading done. Maybe grab some lunch, since it's almost 1 o'clock. And then I'll do some reading after I eat lunch. Well, although I'm not that hungry. I'm not that hungry yet, but I don't want to eat too late. Like, I'll probably eat the other, because yesterday, since my work was 4 to 8:45, so I didn't eat my whole sandwich, and my dad, along our outing yesterday, he offered to take me to Cracker Barrel, which is such a great, southern restaurant. If you never heard of Cracker Barrel, if you live, on the other side of the United States or in another country, it's a great southern country cooking restaurant. There's a little store where you can buy a lot of cute little things. There's a lot of country southern stuff, so it's not, not everybody's cup of tea, but the food is really good, and it's like a southern, and it was brought to the to like up farther up north to the East Coast, like to Maryland, Virginia. I think they have Cracker Barrels now. And I know they have Cracker Barrels in Maryland, because I was very excited when they built a Cracker Barrel in Waldorf this was way before we moved, because we used to go there all the time when we were living in South Carolina. I mean, when we would visit South Carolina, we used to go there all the time. So I was very happy that they decided to build one in Waldorf, although I also dreaded it too, because the people, I love, unfortunately, the Waldorf population, it's not as appealing, and sometimes I feel like restaurants turn a little trashy in Waldorf. And, so I was a little, because there's an aesthetically pleasingness about Cracker Barrel that I really like. But anyway, so I'm gonna stop. Like I said, I'm gonna stop. I'm really gonna stop for real this time. So I hope you all are doing well. I hope you're staying safe and washing your hands and wearing a face mask and not going out too much. And I hope, everything is going well. And like I said, not only are you staying safe in that way, but in other ways too. And I hope your reading is going well. And if you like this video, be sure to give a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification below if you want to know when I post, when you want to be notified when I post new videos, which is very sporadic. And I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye!